its way across, still some surface water issues possible on Monday morning. A dry and brighter start to the new working week elsewhere, but the sunshine will help those showers to develop as we head into the afternoon. Again, the odd rumble of thunder is possible, particularly perhaps across areas of Northern Ireland. A little bit more sunshine in between those showers tomorrow, though, compared to Sunday. Temperatures climbing to highs of 22 to 26 degrees Celsius. As we head into the evening, those showers will gradually fade their way off, taking a little bit of time across northern and western areas, but eventually clear spells developing, some isolated mist and fog patches forming. A bit of cloud lingering across the far southeast. That might make it, again, a bit of a humid night to come here. And into the start of Tuesday, there's potential that we see, again, another band of very heavy rain push its way across southern areas. There is still some uncertainty in regards to the exact details of that, so do keep up to date with the forecast. Low pressure that has been with us, though, is steadily progressing its way northwards, and that's going to allow this area of high pressure to build its way in a bit more as we head towards Thursday. So a drier day to come on Thursday, and also a little bit less humid. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome to Gloria Meets. First up is the Liberal Democrat leader, Ed Davey.
The head teacher saw me in the corridor and said, "Hello, Davey. Sorry to hear about your mum. We've never had orphans before." You know, I hadn't considered myself an orphan, but that was not quite the way I'd want teachers to deal with children who lost one or more parents.
Chair of the Treasury Select Committee, Conservative MP Harriett Baldwin.
And I'm one of those people who, if someone says no to me, you know, that really makes me want to go for it.
South Yorkshire Mayor Oliver Coppard.
Well, I don't think any mayor in the country would say that they've got the powers, the control, the money that they would want.
All that straight after your news.
It's 6 o'clock, I'm Ray Addison. Gloria Meets is coming straight up, but first, the latest headlines and our top story. The Met Police says it's aware of new footage showing Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions and is considering it. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised, describing the behaviour as unacceptable. In the footage obtained by the Mirror, Tory staff can be seen ignoring social distancing rules imposed by the government at the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at the Christmas party were later named in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. Mr Gove told us disciplinary action has already been taken.
The reason why those steps were taken was to reduce the spread of the disease, in order to make sure that the pressures on the NHS were manageable, in order to make sure that we could treat people who were very ill. So again, the actions here are deeply distressing, and I can only apologise to people that individuals behaved in this way. My understanding is that there was an investigation into the party when the photograph emerged, and people were disciplined.
Well, MPs will debate any possible punishment for Boris Johnson tomorrow after he was found to have misled Parliament over Partygate. The Privileges Committee recommended that the former Prime Minister should face a 90-day suspension had he not already resigned in advance of that judgment. Now, it's understood that his supporters are being encouraged to abstain, but former Brexit Secretary David Davis told Camilla Tominey he will support the committee and its findings are clear.
One of the things about Parliament is it's the highest court in the land.
Yeah.
That creates a problem when you're coming to privileges. What's that problem? It's like having a trial in a village. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody is entirely unbiased.
How do they know his own mind at the time?
They don't have to. They don't, what they know is what he knows.
Yeah.
If you go to a party, you know it was a party. You don't need an advisor to tell you.
Nicola Sturgeon continues to maintain her innocence after being questioned by police investigating SNP finances last weekend. Scotland's former First Minister spoke as she returned home for the first time since being arrested and released without charge.
You know, I can't say very much just now. What I will say is reiterate the statement I issued last Sunday. I am certain that I have done nothing wrong. I intend to be back in Parliament in the early part of the week. I'll make myself available for questions then, obviously within the constraints that I am referring to right now. For now, I intend to go home, catch up with some family. I know I'm a public figure, I accept what comes with that, but I'm also a human being that's entitled to a bit of privacy.
On TV, online, on DAB Plus Radio and on TuneIn too. This is GB News. Now let's get straight back to Gloria Meets.
Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats. When I started researching your life story, I found what has happened to you throughout your life really quite stunning. Your father John died when you were 4, and your mum Nina died 11 years later. That is one hell of a start in life. How does a child deal with that?
Well, it's funny, when I was 4, I knew something terrible had happened because I could hear my mother sobbing and all the comings and goings. But when you're that young, you sort of roll with it. You're worried about your mum, but you sort of go with it. When she became ill, obviously she was the light of my life and everything revolves around my mum. Initially, she had a mastectomy. She originally had breast cancer, and then it went to her bones. And that's when she became terminally ill, and she became more or less bedridden and wheelchair from when I was about 12, and then she died when I was 15. And we cope with it, mainly because of the family, like most people do. So her mum and dad, my nan and granddad, were there all the time. We got great support from the neighbours. A particular family across the road, the Malhotras, were fantastic, made brilliant curries. And so it was that sort of community and family that got us through, really.
And it's very hard to imagine, but you had to administer morphine to your mum when she was terminally ill. You were a young carer.
Yep.
Is there anything that you learnt about being a young carer which should inform public policy today? Do you think if this had been in place, maybe this could have helped me?
I didn't get much support. I had friends, but it was mainly me and my brother who were supporting each other. And frankly, my mother. I mean, my mother was my major support. I'd sit on her bed, lie on her bed and talk to her for hours. And I don't think they'd actually allow today what happened back then. I mean, we had a bell jar this big of morphine in the kitchen, and I'd go and put it out and then go and give it to her. I had to put electric pads on her in order for her to give herself electric shocks to take away the pain, because bone cancer is extraordinarily painful. So I think I would have helped have a little bit of more counselling and support. I sort of hope we be better than we are back then, because it was 79, 81.
Do you think, you said it'd be better if you'd have had some counselling or support. Do you think you were depressed?
No, I don't think I was depressed. I mean, I was upset. It was quite a sad time, there's no doubt about that. And at school, you're going through that sort of puberty, and you're growing up and you're with mates, and they couldn't understand what was going on. And so I'd have moments where I felt a bit detached, a bit isolated. And I think that is one thing that young carers feel in education. They do feel a bit isolated and lonely sometimes because people around them don't get it. And often they're not identified. I mean, I wasn't identified by my school at all. They took ages to realise that something was going on, and they were pretty blooming hopeless, to be honest. Some lovely teachers who were friendly and wanted to help. But, when my mum died, the head teacher saw me in the corridor and said, "Hello, Davey. Sorry to hear about your mum. We've never had orphans before." I hadn't considered myself an orphan, but that was not quite the way I'd want teachers to deal with children who've lost one or more parents. And I think, you asked about public policy. I think teachers and people in schools need to be trained to help young carers and people who suffer bereavement. And I'd say the bereavement bit is the one that worries me more. I'm passionate about helping young carers, but children and young people who lose their parents, I think the bereavement support isn't anywhere near as good as it should be.
So you married, you have 2 children now, John and Ellie. John's now 15 years old. He can't walk or talk unaided, I read. How do you deal with John's condition as a family?
Well, first of all, he has a condition which is undiagnosed. It's a brain condition, neurological condition, and it means, as you say, he can't walk or talk. We just have to provide that care for him. So my days normally start around about 6 o'clock, when I can hear him calling out for daddy, because he said daddy for the first time when he was 9.
Wow.
Which was a major day for me. So he says daddy quite a lot. And so I go into him and get him up. He can't get up himself. He can't go to the toilet himself. He has a nap every night. So my first job, is very personal care. So I sort him out, I take him for a shower, I clean him, and then we massage him every morning because his condition, he'd be quite stiff. So we massage him. Then we dress him and bring him down. And my wife and I do that. We try to get carer support. We're fortunate to have a very supportive family who helps us with that. Many families don't get that. And, one of the things that, going to the politics, I think we need to talk about carers far more. Supporting family carers, not just looking after disabled children, but looking after a husband or wife who's got Alzheimer's, or someone who's terminally ill. We need to support carers far more. I don't ask it for myself. We can cope. You have to be very, very well organised, extremely well organised with your time. You can very time sensitive and have to plan in order to get by and get things done.
And last year,
Your wife Emily went public with her diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. How is she?
Well, she's fantastic. Her condition, she's had it for quite a long time. The diagnosis was a long time ago, but it was very gradual. And it's something called remitting MS, where you can improve a bit. But she was really hit by lockdown. Lots of people with different disabilities, MS, but other conditions, were really hit by lockdown. So for Emily, she couldn't do some of the exercise she used to do, like swimming, I think. And her mobility declined quite a bit. And so she decided she wanted to go public because it became so obvious, because she walks with sticks now. She wanted to talk about it, and so we did. And that creates challenges, but she's a real fighter. So, watch this space, she'll be running the marathon if we're not careful.
Women in full-time work, they're often asked, do you feel guilt? Because you've got your family and you have this high-pressured job. But it shouldn't actually just be women who are asked that question. So I'd like to ask you, do you feel guilty?
Of course I do. I'm thinking about them, most of the time during the day. Bring my wife, obviously. I've got to make sure my wonderful daughter gets the time and care and support that she needs. I am fortunate because I live in London, right? So I go back to my house every day, and I am very much part of the family in the mornings, and I try to get back in the evenings whenever I can. And we organise my diary so I can be as present as I want to be, which is as much as possible. Being a MP, being a leader of a political party, you're torn in different directions. Fortunately, because Emily is in politics herself, she's a local councillor, she stood for Parliament 4 times. Unfortunately, she wasn't lucky to get elected, but she's now plays a massive role on the local council. She gets what I'm trying to do. It's a shared endeavour, and so we work very closely together.
It's just one hell of a story. Because of the seniority of your position, you are the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Just want to do some bit of politics with you.
Sure.
So you were a cabinet minister in that last Cameron-Clegg coalition government. Wasn't that enough to put you off coalitions for good?
Well, the thing was, it's interesting, the dynamics, because a lot of people didn't see what people like me were doing. I was fighting the Tories every day. I mean, I fought the Tories all my life. My first involvement in politics back in 1987 wasn't with the political party, it was with tactical voting, trying to get the Tories out, right? So I fought them all my life, and I fought them every day in the coalition. But you have to make that work for government. So I was in charge for 3 and a bit years of energy and climate change policy, which is a passion of mine. I got into politics partly because of the environment. And the Tories would try to stop me. And I had to pretend I was doing their stuff while I was getting on with doing Liberal Democrat stuff. And you had to play those games. I like to think we were pretty successful. We quadrupled Britain's renewable power, wind power and so on. And I stopped the Tories doing what they wanted to do. So politics is the art of the possible. And I was trying to get things that the Democrats believed in, more help for disadvantaged kids with the pupil premium, help people with mental health problems, renewable power, the environment. And the only way you can really do that is if you're in power and you just have to manage the situation you're handed with.
So on the logic of that argument, it would be possible if the Conservatives were the biggest party. I'm making a lot of suppositions, but I think it's a consensus that it's a fight for who's the biggest party, of course. Politics has the ability to prove us wrong. But on the logic of that argument, you could go into coalition with the Tories again.
I've made it very clear. I'm glad you're giving me the opportunity to make it clear again. We will never do a deal with the Conservatives while I'm leader of the Liberal Democrats. I said a few minutes ago that I fought Conservatives all my life, and to get this awful government out of power, we have to remove a lot of Conservative MPs. And I said when I became the leader that was my mission, to remove Conservative MPs and remove this Conservative government. It would be logically bonkers, having done that, to put them back. We will not do that.
Now, Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, he says, we're going to win a majority government. I mean, there's a lot of scepticism about that. But if we take him at his word, then there is no role for the Liberal Democrats in any coalition government with the Labour Party. Do you think it's fanciful for him to suggest that there can be a majority Labour government?
He's got to say his piece. What I do for the Democrats, I want to say why people should vote Liberal Democrat. That's the most important message for a leader, whether it's our positions on cost of living, on the NHS, on the environment, whatever it may be. I want to make people understand what we're about and to vote for local Liberal Democrat MPs as their local champions. And One thing I've learned, because I've been in politics a little while, I got elected age 31 in 97, so I've worked with lots of leaders, with Paddy Ashdown, who is my hero actually, Charles Kennedy, Mean Campbell, and so on. And what I've noticed is in elections, those that focus on winning the elections and not days after the election are most successful. So, what I'm going to do as leader of the Liberal Democrats is not fall into the trap of hypothecating and what will happen in the future. I'm going to focus on that election so I do get rid and play the Liberal Democrat role in getting rid of this Conservative government.
At the last general election, the then leader, Jo Swinson, she stood up and said, I want to be the next Prime Minister. I'm standing in front of you as the Liberal Democrat leader to become the next Prime Minister of Britain. Are you doing that?
I'm going to be clear, and interview after interview, I'm going to say I want people to vote Liberal Democrat for our policies, for our great candidates, to elect as many Liberal Democrat MPs as possible. And the more Liberal Democrat MPs people vote for, the more you'll have people championing those policies in the next Parliament. Whether you're in the opposition or government, you can make a big difference. Both to your local area, to your constituency, as you know very, very well, but also into the national debate. So my job is to champion the cause of Liberal Democrat candidates, and I'm going to focus on that with laser beam-like.
Do you and Keir get on?
Well, I don't often chat to him, to be honest. I tend to chat to him at national events. So I don't know who did it, but I was sat next to him during the coronation. So obviously I chatted, we had a long wait, which was fine, of course, for His Majesty and Her Majesty. And I was chatting with him a lot about the event, about local elections. The other time I've had the chats with him have been at the Remembrance Sunday in Whitehall, where past prime ministers and party leaders are all sort of milling around.
Yeah.
And, I get to talk to the Prime Minister, talk to Gordon Brown at those events, and obviously I rub shoulders with Keir those. So those are moments where you're doing your duty as a national party leader, and you get a chance to, chat with others.
So no secret meetings, just
no secret meetings. No.
Now, when you said that you wanted to get rid of the Tories, that was what was driving you. That's what has always driven you in life. There's these 3 by-elections coming up. Now, wouldn't it be sensible to do a deal on this? Because Labour are saying we are going for the treble. We're going to take all of those seats. I'm sure you may or may not say the same. You can tell me that in a moment. But clearly, that is splitting the anti-Tory vote. Is that sensible? You might end up with 3 Tory MPs back.
Well, first of all, I think in a democracy, you should give people a chance to vote for your values and your policies and your ideas. So we will stand in every single seat. And I have a great faith in the British people. If they want to vote a particular party out or a particular party in, they'll make those choices on the local arithmetic. So when I look at these by-elections, and we're certainly going to stand in all of them and campaign in all of them, I have noticed in mid-beds that we have a fantastic chance. And the reason I think that is it's very much like the other 3 by-elections we've won in this Parliament. Cheshire and Amersham in true blue Buckinghamshire. People said we couldn't win. We did. And we came from 3rd place in North Shropshire and 3rd place in Tiverton and Honiton, because we got good local strength. So, I've already been to Mid-Bedfordshire twice. I've knocked on doors, I've talked to people. I'm really clear Liberal Democrats are the challengers. And actually, you politicians often do this expectation management. I'm not going to do it. I think we can win. I genuinely do.
In Nadine Dorries' former seat?
And I haven't been to the others, so I can't comment on those.
But from your sense?
In mid-beds, I think it's game on.
A few weeks ago, you did this interview on LBC. Nick Ferrari asked you, can a woman have a penis? You said, well, quite clearly. Without getting into the specifics of the issue, you said you were talking about a small number of people. You faced a big backlash for those comments. Have you had a rethink since you said that?
The position I described in that programme is the one that I think is just factually true, namely that the vast majority of women feel that their gender is the same as their biological sex at birth. But it's just a fact that a few don't, a small number don't. And the law in our country has recognised that for the last 20 years and given them protections. And all I think is that the debate should focus on that, on the facts, and we should be a bit more sympathetic and calm and compassionate to people.
It's an extraordinary life story. Ed Davey, Liberal Democrat leader, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Coming up, Chair of the Treasury Select Committee, Conservative MP Harriett Baldwin.
Inflation, which I remember from growing up in the 70s, is an absolute curse on an economy. It is the worst tax a whole economy can pay.
South Yorkshire Mayor Oliver Coppard.
It is always easy to tell people you don't like your opponents in politics, that they're doing the wrong thing. It's harder, much harder, to tell your friends that they're not doing the right thing.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Radio.
Harriett Baldwin, Conservative MP, elected in 2010, and now the chair of the Treasury Select Committee. Only the second woman ever to hold that position. I'm going to start by something you said when you got that job, which was last year you were appointed. You said this: they say that one of the differences between men and women is that if a job is posted, the man will think, I've probably got 60% of those qualifications, I'm going to go for it. And a woman will think, I don't think I have 100%, so I might not put my name forward. The minute the opening occurred, your words, I thought, I'm 200% qualified to do this job. Give us some tips. Those of us who aren't as confident and probably have fallen into the category that you suggested when it comes to applying for some jobs.
Absolutely. And it was a moment where I realised that actually my whole life so far had been leading up to qualify me for the role that I currently am privileged to hold. I had worked in financial markets myself. So for over 2 decades, I was with JP Morgan. I was one of the few female managing directors there. And then I changed career completely, gone into Parliament. And I was fortunate in 2015, after the 2015 general election, for that year in the run-up to the referendum, I was Economic Secretary, which is the minister in charge of the sort of financial services sector in the city. And then I'd been on the Treasury Committee for 3 years since the 2019 general election, and I'd tried the first time to get elected as chair and hadn't succeeded. So then when a vacancy occurred, I thought, I'm going to go for it. And fortunately, you know, although there were 5 candidates, my colleagues in Parliament agreed and I was elected to the chair.
Where do you get that sort of confident inner streak, that self-belief, which is admirable and we all should have it? Where does yours come from?
I've grown up, you know, someone born in 1960, in a world where women actually didn't do very much. You know, they got married, they had children. I think my own mum, when she married my father, she actually gave up her job. And it wasn't considered the right thing to go to university if you were a girl. I mean, it was an environment where girls were told no. A lot of the time. And I'm one of those people who, if someone says no to me, you know, that really makes me want to go for it. And so another area that said no was financial services, was the city. It was terribly posh, terribly male, if you recall. And I deliberately joined an American firm because I thought they would be more meritocratic than some of these old school type bastions of masculinity in the city. And sure enough, I had a flourishing career with JP Morgan. I'm very grateful to them for my time there. But even there, you know, they said no a lot of the time. So there was no woman who, as an investment manager like I was, had ever come back from maternity leave. And so I'm in my mid-30s, I have my son, and I go back to work after 14 weeks, full-time, as a portfolio manager, travelling the world. And I get to the end of the year and my portfolios have done well and my client base had grown and I'd had a fantastic year. And my boss, you know, starts to give me the bonus conversation. And he said, well, you know, Harriet, you've had the most fantastic year. And your bonus really should be, you know, double what you got last year. But because you took 14 weeks maternity leave, I'm cutting it proportionately as a result of that. And I said, really? Get HR in here now. I mean, you're meant to be paid for results, not for how much time you spend in the office. And yet I was the only woman in that firm who had ever returned from maternity leave in an investment manager position.
Why? Just because...
Well, not surprising, is it, when you think about the kind of no signals that management was sending out?
But that's maternity discrimination. Do you think it's, you know, it's alive and well,
This is the mid-90s, Gloria. Things have got a lot better since then. But, you know, it was my generation that had to really fight against that, saying no, and no, you can't do that. And, you know, I succeeded. I was very lucky. After that, they promoted me. You know, I continued to go up the organisational ladder. But I was regarded as this kind of forerunner of those who've come after. And I think, you know, we've every time someone says no to me, and then I would look at Parliament and I would look at Conservative MPs and I would think, do you know, they haven't got anywhere near enough women MPs. And of course, that's the moment when you start down that road to getting elected yourself.
When it comes to women in politics, I mean, we've now had 3 women prime ministers, all Conservative. The one, we've had female foreign secretaries, the one job that we've never had a woman as Chancellor, a woman in charge of the nation's finances. Why is that the hardest nut to crack?
I think it's just been the circumstances, and I think we'll have one definitely in my lifetime. What I want to see in my lifetime is a 50-50 Parliament. You know, when you were an MP, when I was first elected, we were still, in terms of the number of women who'd been elected, we were still smaller in number in the entire history of the United Kingdom than the number of men who were in Parliament at that time. I mean, that is an extraordinary statistic, isn't it? And, you know, good on you and every woman who stands for public office, because I think we do need to get to that 50-50 Parliament in our lifetimes.
Now, you're chair of the Treasury Select Committee, as we've said. The economy is at the centre of everything at the moment because people are hurting, families are hurting. The price of everything seems extortionate. Wage growth, in real terms, it hasn't really moved for a couple of decades. I want to ask you about one of the Prime Ministers. The Prime Minister's first pledge, he outlined these 5 pledges. He said, we will halve inflation this year.
It doesn't feel like that yet, does it? No. And it's been such a terrible time for household budgets. It's been absolutely ghastly. Inflation, which, you know, I remember from growing up in the 70s, is an absolute curse on an economy. It is the worst tax a whole economy can pay. And of course, it's a tax on the very poorest households above all. And this particular bout of inflation has been particularly cruel because as a result of Putin invading Ukraine, you've got the price of energy going up so much, you've got the price of food going up so much. Now, those are 2 of the most important items in your household budget. And inflation has been unbearably cruel, particularly to those on the lowest incomes. So we've got to get inflation under control.
More from Harriett Baldwin after the break.
Except the difference is that in a Las Vegas casino, of course, the women would wear short skirts. And he comes over to me and he gives my skirt a sort of hoik.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
No.
It seems to be harder in our country, in the UK, than it is in other countries. So, of course, everybody's been subject to these global factors, but why is it so tough for us? And so tough that the Prime Minister as I say, made this his number one pledge. It doesn't look like it's going to make it.
I actually do think we'll see inflation come down over the second half of the year. We've already seen it go past the worst, but it is still far too high. It's still 4 times the Bank of England's target. And you're right in terms of the Prime Minister's pledge to halve inflation. He's given that job to the Bank of England, hasn't he? So through the Chancellor writes the Bank of England a letter, says, we want you to aim for 2% over time. And since the bank's been independent, it's been about 25 years, they have, on average, achieved that 2%. But at the moment, it just feels so painful. And of course, in terms of tackling it, you know, I think very much on the record as having been on the committee throughout this whole period of signalling to the governor, you know, that things were getting out of control long before, you know, they really shot up. So I think there were signs that we were running into inflationary conditions. I think the bank was too slow and too late and too modest in terms of the rate increases needed to tackle the level of inflation. They thought it would be transitory.
And that means mortgages are forecast to keep on rising. These are hard things to... There's going to be an election in not too distant a future. This is a tough backdrop. What do you do? How do you sort of say to people, I'm really sorry, but your mortgage rates are just going to keep going up? Is that inevitable?
Well, I imagine that the Bank of England, again, they're independent, they have to make these decisions. I imagine that they will think about doing some more because, as you say, the UK story is still not over. And so for everyone who's been used to interest rates being quite ridiculously low by historic standards, you know, they were close to zero. I've got a 5-year fixed at the moment at like 1.2 something percent. It's ridiculous. But those deals will come to an end in stages, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on those particular households. The other thing in our committee we've been campaigning on, as you've probably noticed, the day the Bank of England puts rates up, the banks put your mortgage up. But if you've got any savings, they haven't bothered to put your savings rate up. So all of those people out there who've actually perhaps paid off their mortgage, they've got some savings, and they've been used to getting nothing on those, the banks are sort of saying, oh, well, you can carry on getting virtually nothing on them. And we've been campaigning to try and get the banks to increase those savings rates for our constituents.
So your message in a sentence to those banks on those saving rates?
Yeah, is be fair to your loyal customers. It's often the loyalist customers, the ones who aren't comfortable moving money across with an app, you know, the ones who can't find a single open bank branch on the high street anymore, you know, who feel very uncomfortable opening a new bank account just for the rate. I did ask the Minister about this in the Commons this week, and he flagged up the fact that national savings, you know, the premium bond products, a lot of those which are government backed, they do offer a good rate of interest. So, you know, for your viewers, it's worth looking at the opportunities there as well.
Let's go back and talk about your experience in banking. You talked about maternity discrimination.
Yes.
Sexual harassment, misconduct, yes.
It was always been rife, hasn't it, in workplaces across the land. And, you know, certainly as a young woman, it was not what you'd think of as a very conducive work environment. And I think we've even seen, you know, this week with the FT breaking an amazing story about Crispin Odey, you know, that really bad behaviour still exists in the financial services sector. I'm sure it exists in other sectors, but you know, it's something that I've campaigned all my life to try and tackle and trying to stamp that out and to remove that barrier to women sucking in that sector.
Can you think of any examples? You don't need to name names, obviously, but it was it so commonplace that you would know who was the perpetrator or the sort of the wrong un?
Oh, God, it was just awful. And, you know, I remember one example. So I'm in my mid-20s, I'm working in a trading room, and it had been a very, very busy day in the markets. And there's just myself and the big boss and another trader left in the dealing room. And the big boss walks through the dealing room and he goes, he's American, he goes, "Oh, my God, what a day," he goes. "It was like a Las Vegas casino. You know, except the difference is that in a Las Vegas casino, of course, the women would wear short skirts." And he comes over to me and he gives my skirt a sort of hoik. Now, you know, obviously that was a appalling.
Yeah.
And the thing that was really detrimental about it is that he was the big boss, I never could look him in the face ever again. It was just so humiliating. And that was with only one colleague watching. So yeah, it was a really occasionally unpleasant work environment.
Final question. You've worked in 2 hostile environments for women, politics.
They're getting better.
And finance.
Yeah.
They are.
They are.
Which is the most hostile? Which has the most work to do?
Well, it's been 15 years since I've worked in the financial sector, and I'm confident that despite this Crispin Odey story, that, you know, by and large, things have got a lot better. And I think women have got better at calling out that kind of bad behaviour. But, and I think politics actually is incredibly welcoming to women. I think that it is a great career for a woman, great second career for a woman. I really encourage women who are watching this to think about it as a career, because it is just so rewarding to make a difference for your community and to make a difference for people in other ways.
It's been great to talk to you. I feel like you've made us all want to make a difference. Your positivity and your energy and your no-nonsense style, love it. Harriett Baldwin, thank you.
Thank you, Gloria, for having me on.
Coming up, South Yorkshire Mayor Oliver Coppard.
I've had death threats because of my religion, my ethnicity. I've had things said to me on social media. I'm fairly thick-skinned. I don't particularly take much of that very seriously.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, the big green, my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oliver Coppard, you were elected as South Yorkshire Mayor last year. Do you have enough power?
No, I don't think any mayor in the country would say that they've got the powers, the control, the money that they would want. And I'm in that same boat. I think we're in a moment, aren't we, with devolution, where we're seeing the two main parties, certainly the Labour Party, competing for what more we can do for communities by devolving power to places like South Yorkshire. So I definitely want more power, more control for my community so we can do more in South Yorkshire to address the challenges that we face, like so many other parts of this country.
You are the first and only Jewish mayor. What does that mean to you? Do you feel like a trailblazer?
No, well, first and foremost, I'm South Yorkshire's mayor. So, of course, I'm proud that now I can stand both as a Labour mayor and a Jewish person in this role. And I am proud of that. Of course, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of my community. I'm proud of my heritage. I'm proud of my family's story. But ultimately, I'm here to serve my community and try and fix the problems that we face. And so my faith, my ethnicity is not really the dominant factor in that. Of course, I'm here to serve everybody. But yeah, I'm proud of it. I'm absolutely proud of it because my family's story was a difficult one. So getting to where I am now, I hope, I've made my family proud.
Tell me about your family story. Why was it difficult?
So look, my gran came here from Czechoslovakia. She was smuggled out of the country, essentially. We had family who worked on the railways and she was smuggled out of the country. My granddad was from Vienna. He was finishing his medical degree when before the hostilities started, but when things started getting difficult for Jewish people, he got out on a visa. My parents were reunited in this country and then were interned on the Isle of Man and then built their lives here in the UK. They both became teachers. My grandfather never finished his medical degree, couldn't finish his medical degree. They both became teachers, serving their community first in Halifax, then in Birmingham, I believe. And my parents, my mum became a teacher, my auntie became a teacher, my sister's a teacher. So I think, we've got a history of public service, I hope, in my family. And I think that comes from my family wanting to give back to this country, to our communities, because ultimately this country gave my family safe haven when not a lot of people would.
Have you ever been subject to anti-Semitism?
I have. I've had death threats because of my religion, my ethnicity. I've had things said to me on social media. I'm fairly thick-skinned. I don't particularly take much of that very seriously. I think we're facing a difficult time in this country because of anti-Semitism. Jewish people, Jewish communities, I think, are acutely aware of a rising tide of anti-Semitism, not just here, actually, to be fair, across the world. The Labour Party certainly struggled with anti-Semitism. Indeed, there have been instances, I have to say, of anti-Semitism from presenters on this channel. And so it is difficult for Jewish people. But frankly, I don't let it bother me. I don't let it stop me from doing what it is I think I'm here to do, which is serve my community and try and fix some of the problems that we face.
Did you see allegations of anti-Semitism on presenters on this channel?
Well, look, I've certainly heard things from presenters on this channel. I've heard them say things which I would consider to indulge in anti-Semitic tropes. And it's not the only place where I hear that. I hear that all over the place. And I hear that on social media. I hear that from people who you wouldn't always expect.
Those people would deny.
I'm sure they would.
For the record.
I'm sure they would.
We welcome freedom of speech, and of course, you are free to say that. So you stood to be a Labour MP in Sheffield. You stood against Nick Clegg. You came close to winning the seat. You did that in 2015. You didn't stand in 2017 when Labour actually did win the seat from Nick Clegg. Why didn't you stand again?
I'd committed. I had a job. So I mean, look, I stood for election. I was candidate for 2 years, 2013 to 2015. It's my home seat, Sheffield Hallam. It's where I was born and raised. Born here, raised here, working to be your next MP was my slogan. And I was very proud of that campaign. I think we ran it in the right way. It was a community-based campaign. We had hundreds of volunteers in a place that had never had a Labour MP before. And yeah, we ran Nick Clegg really close, and I'm very proud of that. But in 2017, my life had moved on. I'd actually moved to London. I'd got a job working for a charity, giving books away to kids. And I promised my boss, she'd asked me, are you just going to run away at the first opportunity and go and try and be an MP again? And I'd said, absolutely not, because I took Theresa May at her word. She'd said there was going to be no snap election. I believed her. And quite honestly, I wasn't sure that I wanted to go into Parliament after the experience that I'd had. It was brilliant. I loved it. I loved every moment of it. But politics has never been the be-all and end-all for me. It's something that's been, I think, in me all my life, but I haven't always been in politics.
I read that you didn't stand because you could not stand under Jeremy Corbyn because of the anti-Semitism crisis in the party at the time.
Well, in 2019, I made that choice. So I publicly said I didn't think I could, in good faith, put myself forward to be a Labour MP when the Labour Party was not tackling the anti-Semitism that we saw so clearly in our own ranks. And I couldn't put myself up and genuinely stand on a doorstep, knock on a door, and tell people at that point that in good faith, I thought there were no problems with anti-Semitism or that the Labour Party had tackled the issue sufficiently well. So I made that clear, I made that public, because I did think we still had a long way to go. And I'm really pleased that now, as I say, look, I'm a Labour mayor in South Yorkshire. I put myself forward to be the mayor of South Yorkshire for the Labour Party because I do think that we have come a long way in a really short space of time. There is always work to do. But Keir has stuck to his word. Keir Starmer has stuck to his word. And he has, I think, ripped out anti-Semitism by its roots in the Labour Party. And that's hard. That's a hard thing to do. And Keir has, I think, been true to his word. It is always easy to tell people you don't like, your opponents in politics, that they're doing the wrong thing. It's harder, much harder, to tell your friends that they're not doing the right thing. I'd like to think that's what I did in 2019, and it's certainly what we're now doing in the Labour Party as a matter of course. It is not okay to be anti-Semitic, and it's certainly not okay to be anti-Semitic and be in the Labour Party.
Now, you've made tackling health inequalities in South Yorkshire your big priority. Tell me about those inequalities.
So look, South Yorkshire has, like loads of places actually, has dreadful health inequalities. A baby born in Rotherham today is likely to lead a life that is 5 years shorter than a baby born in Richmond in London. There is a 20-year healthy life expectancy gap. So when you get too ill, frankly, to work, all too many people in South Yorkshire reach that stage about 55, 56, 57. In our wealthier parts, the wealthier parts of our communities, 75, 76, 78. So those health inequalities have plagued South Yorkshire. We're a post-industrial community. In all too many parts of South Yorkshire, there are long-standing health challenges. And for all too long, we put it in this box marked too difficult, too hard to fix. And I'm determined that we're going to take it out of that box and try and do something about it. The month that I became mayor, I was 40 years old, and one of my best friends from school, the most talented runner of his generation, I don't think that's an exaggeration, he was a Somali refugee, came here when he was 9, it's called Idris Ahmed. And he used to post faster times than Mo Farah at the same age. He won the South Yorkshire Cross Country Championships, starting in the changing rooms when everybody else had already started the race. He came second in the country, not doing a day of training in his life. And he died the month that I became mayor. And he was one of my best friends. And that is a story that is all too common for all too many people in places like South Yorkshire. And so, yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's hard. But we're going to try and
why did he
fix it.
die? How did he die?
He had a heart problem. He had a heart problem when he was a kid. It's one of the reasons why he stopped running, because his family couldn't navigate the systems and services that all too many of us take for granted, albeit maybe not at the moment. But the NHS is there to serve us all, and yet all too many people can't access it in the way that they should be able to. And so Idris's family were one of those families that couldn't navigate the NHS, didn't get the help and support that they needed, the help and support that he needed. So he never got the treatment that would have, I hope at least, I think, have stopped him from passing away at such a young age. He left behind kids who I still know. He was a talented athlete. He had his problems, but he was a talented athlete, and he should have been a world-class athlete who went to the Olympics and represented our country, and yet he died. And that is not a common story, but it's certainly not a story that we don't hear from other people in South Yorkshire and other parts of our country, because health inequalities are endemic in all too many of our communities. And so I have said South Yorkshire is going to be the healthiest region in the country. That is not a small goal. That is a massive challenge. It's going to take a system-wide effort for us to try and hit that goal. And it probably won't happen in my time as mayor, but I can certainly start us on that journey, and I can certainly lift that problem out of the too hard box.
Oliver Coppard, South Yorkshire Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. See you next Sunday at 6.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Some of us may have seen some lightning strikes and heard a few rumbles of thunder to end Sunday. It's all due to this area of low pressure that is sat just to the west of the UK, but it's bringing unsettled conditions across many areas, and we will continue to see some of those thunderstorms track northwards as we head throughout the rest of Sunday evening. Increasingly though into the overnight period, it's less the thunder and more this band of heavy rain that becomes our issue. Tracking across northern England into Scotland, again some heavy rain, around half a month's worth of rainfall for some areas could cause some surface water issues. Turning drier to the south of that through the early hours of Monday morning, most of our towns and cities holding up around 15-16 degrees Celsius, so a relatively mild start to the new working week. But it's going to be a wet one across Scotland, with that rain gradually tracking its way northwards. Drier to begin the day for everywhere else, but increasingly into the afternoon we'll again see a scattering of heavy showers developing, some thunderstorms also possible, but a bit more sunshine in between those showers on Monday, and in that sunshine we'll see temperatures climbing to highs of 22-26 degrees Celsius. Into Monday evening, those showers will gradually clear their way off. It will take some time for parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, but generally into Tuesday morning it will turn drier here as well. Another humid night for many of us, some mist and fog forming, but into Tuesday we're then watching this area of heavy rain that's going to start pushing in from the south. There is still some uncertainty in regards to the exact details of this, so do stay up to date with the forecast, but we are expecting it to generally push northwards, again with some heavy rain, thunderstorms. Meanwhile for Northern Ireland and Scotland, whilst the day will start drier, we could also see some thunderstorms developing during the afternoon. All that due to that area of low pressure, but it is eventually moving away to the north